After 9 years in Asia and Australia, CNBC's Mandy Drury moves stateside. We'll talk with the Street Signs anchor as she moves to the CNBC mothership. I'm Chris Aarons, and this is Media Beat.
Look, things change.
Anyone with a camera and a computer
We're
and
now
a good
going
idea.
to pay attention to
where
where
they are.
may evolve.
Mandy Drury, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been about a year and a half since you joined CNBC here in the U.S. after 9 years in Singapore and Sydney. How's the transition been to Englewood Cliffs and living here in the U.S.?
It's been a really fantastic transition, and I think it was partly helped by the fact that I was actually coming for several years, like coming and filling in either over the holiday periods or over the summer period when there were lots of people off on vacation, and so I was eased in somewhat. So when I finally arrived for good, or as good as any good is, I already knew a lot of the people, I'd already made friends, and I really felt like I was just coming over to another branch of the CNBC family. It didn't feel like starting a new job and having to prove myself from scratch. So honestly, the transition was very smooth, I felt.
And since you've been here, you've filled in on, or you've been on the call, you've filled in on Closing Bell. Now Street Signs in the afternoon with Brian Sullivan of formerly of Fox Business Network. What are you trying to do on that show that is a little bit different?
It really is quite different. You know, obviously every single day there are 100 headlines that you could pick and choose from. And what we really try to do is to try and dig a little bit beneath the surface and not just grab the easiest headline. We also try and create original content on the show, and we try to keep it very, I don't want to say light-hearted, because that's absolutely not what we're doing. We are really telling stories that people can invest and trade on, actionable information. But at the same time, we don't want to be too serious about it. You know, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, people don't want to be too serious at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think between Herb Greenberg, Brian Sullivan, and myself, we each bring something a little different to the table, and we get along really well, and I hope that the viewer feels that vibe as well.
And Crazy Kramer when he
And he's
jumps on
always
the set.
dropping by.
Yeah.
He was dropping by again today, and he literally just drops by unannounced, and that's what's great about the show as well. It's very spontaneous.
Yeah, and that day part suits you best. You were doing Squawk, the Asian Squawk,
Yes.
so very early
Squawk
morning.
Asia and then Squawk Australia, absolutely.
Yeah. So afternoons are just better for you.
I love it. I
overall?
feel like I've got my life back. Many years. In fact, even when I was at Bloomberg before CNBC, I was doing the vampire shift as well, doing the breakfast show then. You know, you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you work through, you do a full day, and you just feel as if you're always jet lagged. So I really feel like I've got my life back. I'm feeling refreshed, and I'm feeling on top of things.
Yeah. When you put a lot of TV talent in one room, things
Yeah.
can get kind of interesting. How has that been, adjusting with some of the talent that have been at CNBC for a long time?
You know, it's very interesting because working in the Singapore newsroom for many years, I was there for 8 years and then a year in Australia. Coming to the United States, they're big personalities with big voices, and they want to be heard. And I think that's great because obviously they've all got something that needs to be heard as well. But at first I felt almost intimidated and in awe of it, and I felt like I could almost be drowned out in that, because everything is very gentle, it's very diplomatic, and no one shouts and no one yells and no one cusses in the Singapore newsroom. And coming over here to the United States, you almost have to yell to be heard as well. So that's been quite an adjustment for me.
Yeah. Who's the biggest yeller over there?
I'm not going to say. I'm going to leave that one up to the imagination. I'm
Okay.
sure people can guess the 1, 2, 3 top yellers out
Yeah,
there.
we'll do a poll on it and
It's
people can vote on it.
intelligent yelling. It's not just yelling for the sake of yelling, but you know.
We are talking with Melbourne, Australia's own Mandy Drury, and in our next segment we want to talk a little bit more about how you got into the business of business news.
Okay.